Let me first elaborate a little bit more on something we told you on Monday. Many of the residents in the town of Niagara are calling on Governor Hochul to declare these hotspots as a, quote, state Superfund site.
She needs to declare us a Superfund site.
She can't. That's because New York State environmental law does not list radionuclides like the thorium hotspots being discovered in Niagara County as hazardous waste. You heard me right. For the statutory definition, New York State law does not recognize radioactive material as hazardous waste, meaning it's not eligible for Superfund status.
I actually did not know that. And that is certainly something that I would look to address.
I reached New York State Senator Rob Wirt on Zoom Tuesday night, and he says his team is already looking at ways to amend state law to include radionuclides in the Superfund law.
If there's a legislative fix going forward, especially if this is still ongoing when we get to January, which it may be for some people, that is certainly a legislative fix that I would be very interested in not only championing, but trying to get through both the Senate and the Assembly.
EPA Region 2 Administrator Mike Martucci told the media on Tuesday afternoon that the federal agency will be undertaking any cleanup of the new hotspots that have been discovered.
EPA undertakes removal actions like this all across the country at sites with radiological material, much like what we're seeing in some of the homes and certainly in the homes that have been referred to this agency by DEC. So that process is one that this agency has a lot of familiarity with and is positioned well to undertake.
But when will that happen and how long will it take? That's an open-ended question right now that doesn't have an answer. The only indicator of cleanup that was shared by the EPA is that...
So each one of those cleanups is going to be individualized to the contaminants of concern on an individual property. To be clear, the contamination is not uniform. It is very unique to each and every property, and that's why that sampling is necessary to better understand exactly what material is there.
Right now, the main culprit...
We're seeing thorium at elevated levels.
There's been a lot of conversation about the release of information to the public, or in the eyes of some, the lack thereof. The on-site coordinator for the DEC, Pete Luchenko, told reporters on Tuesday that all the data will eventually be released, but the radiological data from the 2023 aerial survey alone does not tell the whole story. When a hotspot is detected, additional ground testing is needed to confirm the data, which is happening now.
But we want to be able to explain it, though, properly. We don't want people to be worried. We don't want people to be upset. We don't want people to be financially hurt by the process we're doing it. We're here to try to help the people. We're trying to make sure it's, try to take care of something that should have been done a long time ago. This is the process is for us to vet the data properly. It will be released. It just takes us a little time.
But for Congressman Tim Kennedy, he wants the EPA to move as quickly as possible to identify the hotspots and clean them up.
Everyone needs to look at this as a top priority at every level of government, and we're pushing them to make sure that they do.
That he attacked Salman Rushdie and nearly killed him while Rushdie was on stage at the Chautauqua Institute 4 years ago was never in dispute here. What jurors had to decide is if the attempt to kill Rushdie was related to a desire by Matar to aid a known terrorist organization. In the end, the jury didn't take long to agree that that was the case, deliberating for only about 2 hours before pronouncing him guilty on all charges. Following the publication of Rushdie's book, The Satanic Verses, in the 1980s, the Ayatollah Khomeini, branding the book blasphemous, issued a fatwa or death order for Rushdie, which was later endorsed by Hezbollah. Prosecutors alleged that in attacking Rushdie, Matar moved to carry out the fatwa, thus providing or attempting to provide support for a terrorist group. For the prosecution, which called 15 witnesses and entered 87 pieces of evidence during the more than week-long trial to make their case, it was a complete victory.
But that just shows you the relentless pursuit my office has to making sure individuals who conduct and engage in conduct like this are pursued, prosecuted, and convicted.
In his closing argument earlier today, Matar's lawyer Nathan Barone told jurors Hadi Matar acted completely independently, free of any coordination with, control by, or support from Hezbollah, that the government failed to prove otherwise, and that their entire case was based on speculation. Just after the verdict, he told Two on Your Side he was surprised at how quickly the 8-woman, 4-man jury found his client guilty.
We'll prepare for some post-trial motions, and we'll prepare the appeal. But more importantly, we'll prepare for sentencing and, just work through the process right now.
Matar himself showed no outward signs of emotion after the guilty verdict was pronounced. He is due to be sentenced on November 3rd and faces the possibility of life in prison without parole. On your side in downtown Buffalo, Dave McKinley, Channel 2 News.
3 souls on a paddleboard. Copy. It looks like a female and 2 children.
Video tonight from the Erie County Sheriff's Office showing a scary situation unfolding on Lake Erie. A mom and her 2 young daughters, ages 6 and 8, stuck while paddleboarding as the sun was setting.
For us to find them in all that open water was miraculous.
Captain Ryan Rogers was the one who found them.
But I could see something floating out there out the right side of the aircraft. And I turned the aircraft, started flying towards what I saw out there. And as we got closer, I could start to make out people. And at that point, I realized that we'd found them.
Paddleboarders were spotted at 8:55, almost 20 minutes after sunset, and were rescued shortly after by a Canadian Coast Guard boat. Rogers believes because of the strong winds yesterday, the current may have swept up the paddleboarders. This is where they found the family, approximately 10 miles away from any land.
I just remember praying. We were in a race against time. We were losing the sunlight. We were losing the daylight. And I just remember praying and saying, I hope to God that we find them.
The Erie County Sheriff's Office says their helicopter took off around 8 o'clock last night after the Niagara Regional Police got a call that a mom and her 2 daughters never came home after leaving to paddleboard at noon. The important thing to know, the family can rest safe tonight.
We found all 3 still on the paddleboard, and they were seemingly okay. I'll bet traumatized.
Captain Ryan Rogers says that if you're planning on doing any sort of water activity like kayaking, canoeing, or paddleboarding, make sure you're coming up with a plan. On your side in Cheektowaga, Maura Vaughn, Channel 2 News.
Attorney Corey Missel represents clients who have gotten tickets through New York State's automated work zone speed enforcement program. He says the state recently expanded the program so it can be used on any road the state is responsible for, not just major interstates. Missel says so far the state has issued more than 700,000 tickets through the program since it began, and thinks defending the tickets is both interesting and complicated.
Usually you are entitled under the law, under the Constitution of New York, under the Constitution of the United States, to confront your accuser. So typically you would be able to confront the officer who issued the ticket on the stand, ask him questions. In this case, there is no officer that issued the ticket. It is a computer-generated ticket.
He says you can't cross-examine a computer, so it's tough. The first time you get a ticket, it's a $50 fine. The second time, $75. And after that, it's $100. He says if you get one, you should not be surprised.
There is a requirement that they notify you that there are cameras in place, that a camera speed monitoring station has been set up.
Missel also reminds drivers that even if work crews are not out working, you still have to obey the work zone speed limit.
It is not up to the driver to look around and see if there are workers and determine if the work zone is active or not. If it is labeled that is a work zone, go the work zone speed limit.
Steve Easton, a former Denny's employee, filed a complaint alleging that Denny's wasn't paying for extended shifts.
Steve, you're a hero. You are a hero.
Because he did something that others likely didn't know to do or know about.
I knew about it and then documented during. Like every violation got marked down. I kept track of all my hours on a calendar.
New York has a law that requires an extra hour of pay if an employee works more than 10 hours on any given day.
And after a thorough review of payroll and timekeeping records, we found that the franchise owners failed to pay more than 1,900 workers the extra pay they were owed for long shifts. Let me say that again, 1,900 workers. It's known as the spread of hours pay and is required by New York law. The spread of hours is not overtime pay.
The AG's office determined Denny's franchise operators Verville Management LLC and Topline Restaurants, Inc. violated state labor laws from 2019 until now. They will pay a $440,000 settlement to the workers.
The company must properly communicate and document their wage and hour policies.
Ken Lee is also a former Denny's employee.
This is really huge for me because this means a lot for my family in general, because I would definitely like to use this money to put as savings for my children.
Of the 1,900, only 300 are currently working still at Denny's. And so the checks will vary from each employee. If you feel that your employee is violating wage laws, please reach out to the Office of the Attorney General at 1-800-771-7755.
When asked if other large restaurant chains are on the AG's radar,
but stay tuned.
Business owners turned a small startup into a thriving business, and the McKinley Mall helped fuel that growth. 19 Coffee celebrated with a ribbon-cutting ceremony Tuesday at their new location off of Southwestern Boulevard.
Tons of people come in, they're like, oh, I haven't been in this mall in, 8 years, but our food court is completely full every single Saturday and Sunday. It's nice because then they come to us to have breakfast or lunch, and then they walk the mall and support the other small local businesses in there. There's a couple kids places in there as well, some boutiques, some arts and crafts places that just moved in.
Co-owners Josh and Aaron Young say they will miss being at the McKinley Mall and the community they created there. Other entrepreneurs say McKinley Mall is a great place for small business owners to grow. Business owner Ronald Tozik says hundreds of people came to the mall last Saturday for a family-friendly event.
All the new stores opening up, people want to get in here. I mean, if you're a small business wanting to go somewhere, the McKinley Mall is 100% the place to try because the rent's very affordable. It's a beautiful building. They've been working on it.
Another business at the McKinley Mall, Catering by Marjorie, was recognized by Buffalo Spree for having the best soup in Western New York.
I'm very proud of it. I take a lot of customer feedback. I have a suggestion box right here.
Sanders says since she moved into the McKinley Mall almost 2 years ago, she's witnessed several businesses attract more foot traffic.
Not only climb and play for small children, but there's a game arcade now. We have a baseball park. There's a skate park. There's a lot of new businesses coming in, and the mall walkers are starting to share with their friends, and word of mouth gets around, and it's good.
Let's hope that it gets better.
For decades, veteran Frank LaGiacono has gotten his breakfast at the Broadway Market.
I've been coming here about 60 years, and it's too bad that it's like this.
He says that a change to the outside of the building could bring more customers to the market year-round, not just during the Easter rush.
It might inspire people to come here.
On Monday, the Buffalo City Planning Board approved the site plan for a roughly $46 million renovation to the Broadway Market. That plan includes changes to the electrical, plumbing, and lighting systems, also new fire alarms and emergency generators. Outside of the building, the project hopes to modernize the 1950s storefront look.
When it's done, it's going to be absolutely beautiful. It's going to be Buffalo's crowning jewel right there with the central terminal.
Owner of We Are Nuts New York Incorporated, Pearl Umphalius, says it's a change that's been a long time coming to the east side.
The city has said that they neglected the building for 30 years, so it needs more than just a facelift, which it's had, but it needs a whole new change, and that's what's happening.
The project will also turn the vacant Save-A-Lot section into a production zone for merchants and replace a 2-level parking deck with a lot and loading dock. That means parking will go from 225 spots to just 75. That's something vendors have the reservations about.
If you go out there and you look at the cars, there's not 75 cars out there. But I think during Easter, that's going to be a huge pain point.
From the apparently on hold Salamanca School District plan for a robot as a teaching assistant to similar concerns, artificial intelligence instruction might end up in the college lecture hall with professors as an endangered species with their jobs. Now there's a new 5-year contract for SUNY staffers with pay hikes and medical coverage, but also
what we got was to ensure that if I am in my classroom teaching, I cannot be replaced by artificial intelligence or an android.
Kowal says our newly ratified agreement follows the state's also recent Loading Act to restrict AI usage and future employment AI replacement by state agencies, and a pilot SUNY tutoring program using AI instruction for students. So in union negotiations with the state,
our members who felt their job was either under threat or had been replaced by an AI system, they would have the means to grieve it, to work through the contract process, and not go through a legal process which would take a lot longer and might be a bit uncertain.
However, another contract consideration with a specific UB Center for AI and other campus research.
As president, I'm representing members of the union who are working with this, who are developing groundbreaking uses, and we support that work. But at the same time, it is the idea that as a union, we want to protect our work and maintain our ability to control it and to maintain the choice.
Then the growing use of AI in the healthcare field with SUNY teaching hospitals and medical schools like UB's Jacobs School.
We focused a lot on the classroom situation and on evaluation, leaving the door open in areas like healthcare where a role for AI is not only, expected, it's already happening and can be beneficial.
We're going to begin first with breaking news in the town of Orchard Park. Police there now confirm a 65-year-old woman has died after apparent explosions and fire tore through a duplex home on Ellis Road. The first responders called to the scene just before noon today. Police say officers immediately evacuating nearby homes, trying to figure out if anyone was still inside that house as the front of the home was fully engulfed in flames. Tragically, the victim's body was found after firefighters were able to put out those flames.
Yeah, it went up pretty good. Yeah, it was pretty fast. By the time we called 911 and by the time the firemen got here, it was gone pretty much.
Police have not released the identity of the woman as yet. Other people displaced by the fire being assisted by the Red Cross, and we understand one firefighter treated at the scene for an asthma-related medical issue. The cause of the fire under investigation by police and sheriff's deputies.
In many cases, Sheriff John Garcia says those who had their cars stolen not only left them unlocked, but also left their key fobs inside the cars. But what's troubling here is they don't need that fob to start the car and make off with it.
They have these different gadgets here.
They are the high-tech tools of modern-day car thievery. No screwdriver jammed in the ignition column needed. In showing them to us, Sheriff Garcia explained how thieves are able to use these devices available for purchase online, which, when hooked up to a vehicle once they're inside it, can be used to code a blank key fob the thief carries with them into one that can start your car, all in about a minute. 4 of them were recovered from a home on Buffalo's east side as part of an investigation into a rash of vehicle thefts in Clarence, where 12 were stolen in a 4-day period earlier this month. He also noted that 3 suspects charged were released after having been given appearance tickets, and that he can't do anything about that.
And the goalposts were moved since bail reform. But what I ask our legislators is to do something like they did for assault on retail workers, where they made it a felony. Now, this is already a felony, but I believe what we should do is make it not part of the bail reform. And people should, stay in jail until they get their felony hearing, which is in a couple days, and maybe that'll change.
But what about the devices themselves, which are intended for use by car dealers and mechanics? We asked Garcia if he thought there should be laws restricting their sale, much as there are for guns, ammunition, spray paint, cough syrup, and a host of other products.
Our New York State penal law book is like this. We don't need any more laws. We need people to be held accountable for their actions. When they commit a crime, Dave, they should do some time.
Most importantly, though, he says people need to lock their car doors, as thieves almost always look for opportunities with a path of least resistance. 3 individuals arrested so far in connection with the Clarence car thefts have been charged with criminal possession of stolen property, unauthorized use of a motor vehicle, and possession of burglar tools. On your side in the newsroom, Dave McKinley, Channel 2 News.
John Scott, Jonathan Acosta, Nate Mills here after the first day of Bill's training camp here at St. John Fisher University. The rain stunk. We'll just put it out there. It was awful. I don't care if Joe Brady says that he loved some early adversity for his football team. It was unlike anything I've experienced, and this is my 13th training camp here, but I wanted to get all of our observations, something that really stood out to you here day one.
Yeah, my socks are still feeling pretty miserable, but something that wasn't was the connection between Josh Allen and DJ Moore. One specific pass sticking out to me where Allen kind of hits him on an out route, DJ Moore sliding to the ground, makes the catch, and still the early days of camp, right? But those are the type of connections that you want to see out of your star quarterback in the big fish target that you acquired for him in the offseason, the guy that you really envision taking this offense to the next level, and finally giving Josh Allen the #1 receiver that he hasn't had since Stephon Diggs. Josh Allen admitting that it's still a work in progress, the chemistry between those two, something that they've sort of echoed going back to the spring. But again, early signs good, the way that they're connecting on plays like that, something that obviously Bills Mafia that was in attendance here love to see as well.
Big change on the defense in a scheme sense, 3-4 moving on from Sean McDermott's 4-3. And there's a guy that I actually think is one of the most intriguing guys, a rookie that stood out to you day one.
Caleb Elam-Zor. It was very light work today, right? We don't have the pads on quite yet, but they had the cushion pads hitting him over in the linebacker section. Caleb Elam-Zor making the biggest pop of that entire group. And when they ran the 11-on-11, he ran in with the ones. Of course, Williams and Bernard dealing with those injuries respectively. He filled in rather nicely, communicating with everyone. He looked like he blended in with that group really well. He was at the ball every single play. He was flying around the field. I like what I see early on now. Granted, I talked about the pads. We have still yet to see those on him. General Manager Brandon Beane referenced that we have to wait to see what kind of player he is when those pads come on, and I'm excited to see that based on what I saw today.
He's as critical as a depth piece as a potential sliding in, because we know Dorian Williams missing all of the spring because of an injury. Terrell Bernard, they're going to continue to manage him and try to slowly bring him along here. He's an important piece there because beyond that, you have guys like Joe Andreessen, Keontae Jenkins. There's not a lot behind them on the inside linebacker track. For me, the thing that stood out, Joe Brady. It's his first training camp, the beginning of his first training camp as this team's head coach. Just some simple things to start. We're now over an hour earlier, 8:30 a.m., and Brady says, I just want to get up and go. That's what I want our things to be. Camp a little bit shorter, only going to the end of next week because I think of the schedule, and he wants to basically crescendo into the preseason and that first stadium practice is, again, just over a week away. Bills continuing practice on Thursday, again, bright and early at 8:30. With Jonathan Acosta, Nate Mills, I'm John Scott for Channel 2 Sports.